Hi, folks. It's Marcus Allen, editor and publisher of TruthIn7Minutes.com. So, you are awakening, and you've reached a sort of tipping point that there's something off about life, but don't quite know what it is. Instinctively, we seek out others for guidance, and we latch on to those who possess either hidden knowledge or seem to be a little smarter than us. I find when it comes to tracking down the real truth about life, the best analogy is to think of an onion. It's got endless layers because there's always a layer of truth waiting for us, ready to cater to everyone on the planet, and there are no exceptions. The outer layer always caters to the largest number of people. This layer is known as the mainstream media. Everything from the news we see on TV or hear on the radio to what's written in newspapers is mostly mainstream news. Most books, trade journals, magazines, and the rest are all part of the mainstream. The next layer of the truth onion is the alternative media. This layer gives us the false impression that they're challenging the mainstream. And it doesn't end there, because there's an alternative to the alternative media known as the esoteric. We can think of these layers of truth as one-way roads that lead us to endless rabbit holes, because once you're funneled to these new layers, it's impossible to go back. For example, once you discover that most sports is rigged, you lose your passion and desire to watch sports ever again. Over many years, we ultimately find out that just about everything in our lives is a whopper of a lie. That's where the famous expression, "Are you sure you can handle the truth?" comes into play. Because the deeper you bite into this onion, the more disturbing our past may seem to be. And we can't go back, because living in a lie is repugnant. Most people never get past the first layer of the onion. Life's artificial realities have been brainwashed into them from womb to tomb. They truly live in Plato's cave. In the allegory of the cave, prisoners live chained to a wall in the cave all of their lives, facing a blank wall. Shadows were projected on these walls, and all they know of life are these shadows and the echoes of unseen objects. But one prisoner escapes the cave and sees the light, experiencing the world outside of the cave for the very first time. And it's nothing he could have ever imagined. If you're listening to my voice right now, you've obviously fled the cave, and you're looking for answers. Most escape the cave out of desperation. Usually they hit rock bottom, either financially or they encounter a traumatic experience in their life. They begin to shed their decades' worth of indoctrination and slowly seek out answers. The speed and direction of their path is almost always determined by what's known as the information gap. This is the acceptable window of information that hooks a person to find out more. If this gap is too big, people flee, literally. They can't handle the truth as it exceeds their information gap comfort zone. If the information gap is too small, there's little in the way of curiosity, and most merely live to die without questioning things. Comfort is the number one enemy of any truth seeker. If going through life is too cozy, then the information gap is too small, and there's no curiosity to find out more. That means anything considered even slightly confrontational is too big a hurdle to accept. This also means the biggest enemy to those seeking truth is social proof. In simple speak, this is monkey see, monkey do. It's the idea of keeping up with the Joneses. Most of us are hardwired to avoid conflict and stay out of the limelight. Marketers master the art of catering to their targets with social proof. That's why we see testimonials and endorsements on selling pages. People seek out normalcy. Most want to be just like everyone else because it's comfortable. To pull off a con, the scammer must get the victim to let down their guard. This puts them at ease. On the flip side, being tagged as a kook, crackpot, weirdo, or conspiracy theorist demonizes people seeking truth, and that's extremely uncomfortable for most. We tend to quickly end our search for truth when we first encounter ad hominem attacks. Name-calling is a very powerful weapon against those seeking out truth. Most are easily intimidated and go back into their cave. Some are able to break through the verbal attacks and forge on. In fact, I'm seeing this percentage grow as the number of life's oddities and coincidences are far too many to be believed. Unfortunately, there is a perception that we're alone in the pursuit of real truth about life. We have this burning desire to track down gurus and experts to help point out and speed up our pursuit of truth. When we reach our sort of tipping point, our information gap increases rapidly. We want to speed up our pace of knowledge. And those that are tricking us know it. So they give us our thought leaders. These experts and gurus are formally known as controlled opposition. These personas and personalities have been trained and groomed to be leaders of all truth movements. They've been given gold nuggets of knowledge which gets passed on to us through osmosis. This new information falls perfectly into our now comfortable information gap. We latch onto our new hero and ultimately become their follower. This is no different than joining a cult. But here's the sinister part. Over time, these cult leaders go rogue and then flip. And within 6 months or so, they spin us off into la la land and actually lead us away from any real truth. So exactly who can we trust? For me, the answer is very few. In fact, the number is so low, I can count them all on just the fingers of my one hand. I know, if we can't trust anyone, that's incredibly depressing, right? And I hear you. I completely understand why you'd be bummed out. But let me reassure you that traveling the road of truth alone is actually quite inspiring, even liberating. And it ultimately leads you to rubbing elbows with like-minded truth seekers, which I'm going to explain a bit later. Personally, I don't trust anyone 100%. And quite frankly, I wouldn't want it any other way. Not trusting anyone 100% doesn't make me paranoid. Instead, it's just me being careful. And it always pays off in spades. My BS detector is on 24/7 alert. And as a result, I almost never get ripped off or hurt. The added benefit is I'm able to skim the cream off the top and separate the truth from the nonsense. Every controlled opposition personality gives us some truth. They have to. That's how they hook us in. I'm able to grab these nuggets of truth and expand my own investigations. For example, I pick up the phone. I ask questions. I've also mastered the art of searching the net to expand my search for truth. These days, I've honed the ability to find the most reliable thought leaders in the least amount of time. Here are a few suggestions to separate the gold nuggets from the nonsense. Are they well known? Controlled opposition is promoted to the top by the top. Real people spend years trying to spread the word. Most fail to even get 500 views on a YouTube video over the course of years. But controlled opposition gets lots of exposure, and they get it quick. For example, it's not unusual to have them upload a YouTube video that gets them 200,000 views in mere days. This is an impossibility for the real person without ties to intelligence agencies. Are they willing to talk? I'll send off a quick email to those thought leaders and see if they respond. Most don't. That kind of tips us off that they're really not willing to help us. We assume that they're too busy to reply. However, I know they're merely playing a power game, and real people don't do this. Those who join the military represent less than 1% of the entire United States population. Yet strangely, almost 100% of the truth movement's thought leaders are current or ex-members of the military. There's something drastically wrong with those ratios. Even more telling, controlled opposition often live on or very close to military bases. And get this, an abnormally high percentage of alternative talk radio shows originate in the 512 area code, which is in Austin, Texas. Austin, if you don't know, is a hotbed of military intelligence home bases. X is not really X. We naturally assign credibility to those who are an X of something or the other. For example, if someone is ex-CIA, we assume their behind-the-scenes information about how the CIA really works is somehow legitimate. The unfortunate reality is anyone X is not. Anyone in the intelligence agencies never retires. And any information they give us is hardly credible and almost always a red herring distraction. Fuzzy conclusions. Controlled opposition comes up with a dizzying array of conclusions on what really happened during some of the most obvious psychological operations. Obviously, 9/11 was one of the greatest magic tricks ever, but these Pied Pipers offer an endless parade of alternative versions of what really happened on 9/11. How can so many smart people be so wrong about 9/11? No meet and greets. Ask any Pied Piper if they'd be willing to meet up with you for lunch. Their silence will be deafening. It's super hard to find real people willing to get together and talk about real truth. You'd think that people would jump at the chance to find like-minded people to rub elbows with. But controlled opposition don't. Why? What are they afraid of? Crazy. In order to qualify as controlled opposition, one must have half a chromosome missing, because a touch of craziness is part of the job description. While it's different in the mainstream media, the alternative media gives us an endless parade of crackpots. This is by no means an accident. You might notice that most controlled opposition don't dress well. They're almost always single and never have any children. And it looks like they get their clothing from Goodwill or Salvation Army. This is a brilliant tactic. After all, who wants to be associated with those, quote, weirdos, end quote, right? Bandage solutions. A surefire way to spot controlled opposition is to pay close attention to their solutions or outcomes. Most simply scare us half to death. They drone on, talking for hours and hours about conspiracy theories and how the government is incompetent, evil, and out to get us. This is a setup. Because after describing the problems and issues which builds rapport, they offer false solutions. For example, they tell us that buying gold is a great hedge against the falling value of the dollar, or that we should stockpile up on storable foods in case the world comes to an end. This is nothing more than scaremongering that leads to profiteering. This formula is thousands of years old, and most still fall for the scam. Preachers, perhaps the biggest tip-off is that controlled opposition are always talking at us. It's a one-way dialogue. They never engage in a conversation. They never ask us questions. Instead, they stand on their soapbox and give us sermons. Most continue to get fleeced by these leaders. They're so charming. And they use neuro-linguistic programming techniques to put us under their spell. Revealing real truth to the masses is the last thing a preacher wants to expose, because doing so would put these criminals out of business. So where do we go from here? Well, we have a choice: to be chained in the cave or to escape the cave. Once out of the cave, we can't go back, because the people inside of the cave won't believe what we've discovered. But that's okay, because there's a growing number of people escaping the cave each and every day, and they're all meeting at my place. There's no need to live inside your head any longer. Meet up with like-minded people, awake people, improve your life tremendously. Find out what it's like to be your own thought leader. Come join us and see how stress-free and awesome life can be. As a result, you're going to become your own leader, and you're never going to get scammed or fooled by false leaders ever again.